Hello, and welcome to Ideas with Diana on this Wednesday, August 10th. On today's topic, I'd like to talk about the right to travel. Based on the news and what I heard, there have been many issues about the right to travel, and also second point is about the Amnesty International news event that happened in Sweden. Well, let's talk about the right to travel first. Well, the 1975 uh, based on the 1975 agreement of the Human Rights Accord from Helsinki, everyone was granted the right to travel. And this was considered an important right because in those days the Cold War was still going on, and we had other countries where basically people couldn't travel out because basically due to very so-called strict passport control. When I use the air quotes, you know that I mean basically I'm sort of saying it ironically in that. And the thing is, part of the Helsinki Human Rights Accord was that everyone had a right to travel, whether you're rich or poor, whether you're privileged, elite or not. Whether your government is doing something that you don't object to, but you shouldn't have to put yourself in peril even to travel, because even in 1947 at the Nuremberg trials, that's still used, that's implemented to the Helsinki Human Rights Accords in 1975. For example, for human testing, if someone has to say something that will endanger their own life or their own family's life, they do have a right to lie, and they do have a right not to speak out. Now, as I watch some of the European leaders' viewpoints, the European leaders are saying, well, we should allow a certain group of people unless they speak out. Well, the problem is if these people speak out, want to travel, they're putting their lives in danger in the country they're traveling from, or endangering the people, or also they're being pushed into a political position which they shouldn't be pushed into, because again, according to the Human Rights Accord, no government or agency has a right to push someone to become political if they do not wish to. However, when people do travel, that does not discount that people have to follow the laws of the country they're traveling into. For example, some people think, well, oh, well, CBD oil is good and we can travel, and I'm an American, I can travel into a country with CBD oil, and I have American rights. You have American rights fully when you're in the United States. When you travel abroad, you have American rights partially due to diplomatic rules, but if you travel in a country where a country does not think CBD oil, even in small amounts, is not considering dealing, then you have to follow their laws, and you can't claim ignorance, because you should be aware of the rules of the country that you're traveling to even before you travel to. Because even to our friends to the north in Canada, many Americans know that Canada is a good friend to the United States. However, their laws are slightly different than ours. For example, there's a famous case a few years ago. One time, someone in Toronto was taking a cab ride, and what happened was basically they're listening to a song on the iPad or the cell phone, and they're playing it. They weren't listening without ear headphones, and the song was playing. And they're playing "The Queen Is Dead." Well, when that first came out in punk rock in the 1970s, a lot of people in London played it. A lot of people in other countries played it, and that everyone knew that basically as a farcical thing, and no one was really ever planning to do this. But well, the one person that's driving the cab basically got offended, and he drove him right to the Royal Canadian Border Police Station, and called and asked RCMP what they thought, and the person had a discussion with the RCMP about that choice of music and why he is so intent on listening to it. It shows how much attitudes have changed in that. Um, And that's my point about the right to travel. Um, just because basically Russophobia, or I'll call it ethnic phobia, or basically other phobias popular now, because someone is different from has a different is different, or being blamed for basically for what the government is doing or something else, and it's other phobias. So since we can't attack the government, we'll attack all the others that are part of that government, including the citizens who really may not have any power or may endanger themselves by speaking too loudly in any government, or even just basically being forced to be made political when they don't want to be political. Because there are many people in the United States who don't wish to be political because they've had enough. And that's why some people actually live like a recluse. They limit themselves from society, and they limit themselves from even going out to popular fast food places because they don't want to deal with the so-called people that are going to pick on because they're an intellectual, because they're LGBT, because they're such and such, or teach the kids to do this. And I speak from personal experience of the other phobia in that. So when I lived a while in Kenosha, during the dark years before basically Kenosha was put on fire, when a religious group tried to take over a McDonald's and even the city, things have improved. Kenosha has 10th Pride Press, and it's doing better, but whenever I go down there, I still don't go down there without friends and an escort because basically, I stay away from some areas that I used to like to go to because basically I don't want to deal with the so-called people doing the other phobia because I'm different. I choose to be intellectual. I choose to read. I choose to study multiple points of view. I don't choose to have blinders on. I don't choose to have my eyes covered, muzzled, and stuff. So basically, on this right to travel. The right to travel is an international human right. It is. It's not a privilege as some people think it is in Europe. No, it's not a privilege. No, 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 no. The right to travel is not a privilege. I mean, if someone is being abused in one part of an area, they have a right to travel to another area to seek not being abused. And also, when they travel, they don't have to be political. They don't have to go on TV and say, "Well, I'm traveling because this and this and this and this, and my name is such and such, and I used to live in the village of such and such," and then put themselves and maybe their friends in danger back where they used to call home. No, you shouldn't put people on the spot. I mean, if people want to travel, you give them. But however, the right to travel is contingent upon following the rules and laws of the area that you're traveling to, and that's part of the Helsinki Human Rights Agreement. But calling the right to travel a privilege, no, no. And what happens regarding banning of visas? Um, has there been a formal declaration of war against Russia by the European nations? Um, that's the only time the right to travel is diplomatically banned is when there's a formal declaration of war. For example, up to 1941, during World War II, United States diplomats and others could travel to Germany and could travel freely in Europe during from 1939 to 1941. But after Pearl Harbor, when when um, when there's a declaration of war against Japan, and then Nazi Germany declared a declaration of war against the United States, that's when travel what could be banned was banned diplomatically, and Americans were told to leave Europe and return to England or the United States because their visas were no longer valid. But according to this Ukraine conflict, has there been a declaration of war of Europe between Russia or declaration of war between Ukraine and Russia banning travel? No, no. There hasn't even been something similar to a Gulf of Tonkin resolution that was used even in Vietnam. So, and even then in Vietnam, with the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, it did not ban travel because diplomatically travel can only be banned in a state of war when two countries are in a state of war. But so far, there hasn't been a declaration of war. So, if someone's saying travel is a privilege, I'm sorry, I disagree with your thought, and because I think diplomatically you can only ban travel if there's a war between two countries, according to the Helsinki Human Rights Agreement and even to the Geneva Convention. Now to the second point. On independent news, namely, I saw this on RT First. I do keep track of RT, France 24, BBC, Deutsche Welle, and other independent news. And sometimes I don't reveal my sources because with this cancel culture and woke culture, I am concerned that basically trying to do the thing about giving proper accreditation will mean that that could make them get canceled from broadcasting. So what I'll do is I'll cite this story, and when when the time is proper to have a proper accreditation be done without this retaliation or other phobia that exists, then accreditation will be given. But I'm doing this in a way to protect certain people who do report, so they can still report, and that because of this cancer culture. Well, going back to this thing in Sweden now. Um, Amnesty International published a report regarding the military tactics in Ukraine that was critical of their military tactics. And the two co-founders of Amnesty International, Swedish branch, and one of them resigned today over the report, saying that basically he felt that Amnesty International had considered basically that he resigned because basically he considered that he was concerned with the original goals of the organization as was formed. I'll say it that way. In essence, that Amnesty International is known for getting help for political prisoners, refugees, and not engaging in politics. Or it's supposed to be apolitical, like when I worked for SES was apolitical as well, and a-religious. So what happened was the report cited that basically about basically with the Ukrainians using public facilities to house a military bases, schools, and then other schools where there are other places that they could have housed other than schools and hospitals. And again, this is questioning the accords of following the Geneva Convention. Yes, someone will say, well, okay, this is war. We don't have to follow Geneva Convention. However, even though someone may say they're an atheist or may say, but even if one is an atheist, still two longs do not make a right. Just because one person plucked the eye out someone for saying an insulting remark to them doesn't mean that someone else has the right to pluck the eye out someone for saying a different resulting insulting remark to them. No, because basically, eye for an eye, tooth for tooth. No, we moved past that a long time ago. Long time ago. So, again, it amazes me. I realize that some of the people that represent some of the European leadership are rather young compared to me. I mean, when I was in my 30s, I myself was considered very outspoken. I was considered outspoken and very, very sometimes rocking the boat and making waves, and I give them credit for that, for having courage to speak out. But I do think, please, I would like to ask them to, when you use the word privilege, please make sure that you have looked up and backed up what you said with actual documentation from the Helsinki Human Rights Accord, and just don't say, well, it's in the Helsinki Human Rights Accord, look it up. No, if you say the Helsinki Human Rights Accord and you say privilege, it's up to you to cite the chapter, passage, and section where it is, because basically you're not supposed to pass it on to someone to sort of try to waste their time to try to search and figure your mindset, because we can't read each other's minds, and we can't do the Vulcan mind meld, So on these 2 points, on the thing about traveling as a privilege, no, it's not. The only time traveling can be banned is when there's a declaration of war between two countries, and so far, I haven't observed that there's a declaration of war between the European Union and Russia, a declaration of war between the Ukraine and Russia, um, nor either like a Gulf of Tonkin resolution between the European and Russia or Ukraine and Russia. But even with the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, that doesn't ban travel because diplomatically and according to the Geneva Accords and other diplomatic accords before the Geneva Accords, travel can only be banned where there's an active war between two countries. Well, let me know what you think. I prefer to receive email on Twitter or at Diana18 or Ideas with Diana. This has been Ideas with Diana, and I'd like to thank all of you for watching.